Hi, welcome to the Empowered Leaders in Tech podcast with me, Sue Parker, where it's all about helping you to get more connected to your work, to become empowered to have an impact, and so that you can wake up feeling motivated and you can come home feeling fulfilled. I'm really happy because today I've got Nicole Tchierske. She is a fantastic woman who helps women in STEM who are overlooked to get reconnected with the opportunities that are available for them and reconnected with their work so that their employers are saying, I want you on this project. I want you to be delivering our best product so that they can have a bigger impact. Nicole is a scientist and also a positive psychology practitioner. She works helping her clients to go from this situation of being very frustrated to having this renewed love for their career. So thank you, Nicole, for joining us today. I'm so excited about this talk.
Yay, thank you for having me, Sue.
Very welcome. And I think we met a few months ago when we were both preparing for our Women in Tech conference speaking events, which was incredibly exciting. And yours was certainly a hit. So you talked about this three framework, the 3C framework for your career. And we're going to have some fantastic insight today into one of those elements, aren't we? So which element are we going to talk about today, Nicole?
Yeah, we're going to talk about the first C, actually, credibility. And yeah, it was really great to connect with you over this conference. And I loved your talks as well. And maybe to give our listeners today a little bit of perspective, what are the other two C's and why am I even talking about those? So basically what I have found both for myself in my own career, but also with the women that I work with and helping them progress in their career. And that might mean something different for everybody. So not everyone wants to be the next CEO. Not everyone wants to climb, the corporate ladder as quickly as possible. For most of us, we just really, we want to be recognized as the expert that we are. We want to be the go-to person in our area so that when things are discussed or there are projects that kind of touch on our areas, then we want to be consulted and we want to be heard. We want to bring our own ideas. We maybe even want to lead those juicy projects, all of those things. So, and I consider all of this progressing in your career, and that's what I help people with. And I have found for myself, plus the women that I work with, it always comes back to three main elements. So one is about credibility. So we're going to dive deeper into that later on. The second piece is connection, meaning building relationships across the business so that you get more visibility. And yes, you can do it in a way that it doesn't feel sleazy. And the third one is communication. So really, how do you communicate in a way that is basically heard by others, and not only heard, but also acted on. So those are the 3 C's. These are my favorite things to geek out about. And that's basically a little bit of a background here.
Absolutely, and I completely understand what you're saying. We race through this career ladder thinking that's the only objective, but the reality is sometimes we are so specialist in our field. We want to be that expert. You're right. We want to be consulted on and included in those great projects because we know that we can have that contribution and have that meaning and purposeful work. It doesn't have to be leadership at all. So I'm glad you mentioned that. That's incredibly important, particularly in the STEM sector, because there are so many different specialisms, aren't there, that you can be that expert in a very niche field, and actually that will serve you really well in your career, really well. Brilliant. So I guess that's why it's important. But how do we start with that first C then, that credibility? How do we start to build our credibility in our organizations?
So oftentimes we might think that this is all about how we're talking to others and how others are perceiving us. And that is true, but it's not the only, and it's not the first step. So I always say that we first need to start building credibility with ourselves, because then, and only then, it really transports incongruence, what we say, because it's so easy to find the quote unquote show offy words, and the proper phrasing and all of this. But if you deliver an introduction of yourself, or if you are talking about your achievements, or if you're sharing the great success of your recent project, but you share it in a way that people say, is she even believing what she's saying? If you don't stand in that conviction that, yes, I am the hot cakes of whatever is going on around here, So that's why I always like to start building credibility with ourselves first. And that is a lot, knowing, of course, knowing what kind of successes do we have in the bank, knowing our strengths. So what are the things that we're good at and that we enjoy doing and that we ideally want to do more of? What are our interests and passions? So what really lights us up at work? What do we find meaningful? What are our aspirations? And putting all of these things together along with your values. First of all, much better who you are as a person, and with that you start to show up differently, because you it's almost like an anchor that you have inside of you, for you to stay grounded. And it's like no matter what gets thrown at you at work, you always have these strengths to fall back on, and you have built that type of skill set over the years, and so on. So it really makes you a little bit unshakable. And the second bit that comes with this is that when you're really clear on who you are and what you get joy out of, it also helps you, almost like a little bit like a compass, that whenever new opportunities start popping up left, right, and center, that you then know which ones to choose, because they are aligned with what you enjoy most doing. Because it can happen so easily that we are distracted by a 30% salary increase and a fancy title. But if that doesn't come with the work that we really want to be doing and that we enjoy most, then just doesn't do us any good. So that is how we start building credibility, first with ourselves, and then we carry ourselves differently.
That's really interesting. So you're right, credibility, you do immediately think, I need to prove to somebody else that I can do something. But you've got to start by having the confidence in your own competence. And you even go further than that and say, who do you want to be? What do you want to do? What are your values? What do you enjoy? Have you read about the zone of genius?
Well, I know I have not read about it, but I know what my zone of genius is, and I'm very intentional and mindful to spend at least 80% of my day inside.
Absolutely. No, that's brilliant. Absolutely. And I guess that's what a lot of our listeners need to do, is make sure they know what their zone of genius is when they're in full flow, when you enjoy that part of your work. And that will help to drive, well, what do I want to do more of? And then what am I good at? And how do I get better at it and prove myself that you come from, I call it a position of strength. When you feel strong, you push out your circle of influence and you can persuade other people. Brilliant. Okay, so after we've done that first stage and we're thinking, so let's say our listeners are thinking, I know exactly what I want to do. I know I'm good at it. I've honed my hard skills. We're all really good at passing these certificates and really getting good at the hard skills, because they're the easier ones. They're the ones that are on a job description and we can check off. But how do we then go about building that credibility beyond ourselves?
So there's no two ways about it. We have to go out and talk to people. And by that, I mean, I recently talked to a woman who got told by her boss and her boss and also her teammates, is like, oh yeah, you're doing really good work and we really like working with you, but you're just not as visible. And she gave me a whole speech about how she doesn't want to be one of those people who just go around randomly shaking hands and being so self-proportional that really in a way that turns her off. And she's like, no, I'm not the type of person. That's not how I tick. I want to do things differently. I said, okay, then do things differently. But I'm afraid if if you're the world's best kept secret, then that doesn't serve you in any way. So I mean, without going too much into that whole visibility and connection bit, but let's just say you are meeting someone for the first time. You're introduced by someone, or just made, hey, you should talk to this person, or you are giving, I don't know, you're running a project and you have to give for the first time an update in the steering group meeting where there are all of these senior managers, and so plenty of occasions where you may have to say a sentence or two about yourself. So how do you do this then? And oftentimes people get the advice that you need an elevator pitch or something like this. And I find that first of all, I find it a very rehearsed way of saying, okay, I only have like 10 seconds to say the right words, and they need to fit every occasion and every person I'm talking to. And I think that's just way too much pressure on one statement. And so when I came across, there's a guy called Church, and he came up with this thing called positioning matrix. And if you Google Matt Church and positioning, it'll pop up for you. So he has a whole blog post about it. Anyway, so he has this 3x3 matrix where he goes, or basically he gives you, depending on the occasion and depending on who you're talking to, he'll give you a very a very flexible way to introduce yourself. It always has an element of something about you, something about what you do, and then why this is relevant to the other person. So these three elements always need to be there. But then he gives you a way of thinking about this. Okay, what if I only have like 2 minutes, or just 1 minute to say something about myself, and I just need to get it over with, and I don't want to draw too much attention to it? Then there's a way to do it. But then there might be another way. So what if I'm in I don't know, in a bigger workshop, and I really want to make sure that we all connect well, and I also I'm proud of what I'm doing, and I really want that to show. Then there's a more energetic version of that. And so it just gives you so much more flexibility, plus all of the thought work that goes into coming up with this makes it so more a lot more, it just rolls off your tongue more easily.
That's really interesting. Absolutely. I will definitely check out the link to that blog. After we've got back past the idea of how do I introduce myself? How do I speak out in a meeting? What do I say about how I am? How do we then go about building the credibility that we can do what we say we can do, what we think we can do? How do we get people to see us as that go-to expert when they have questions, or they need somebody on their project and we want them to say, I need Nicole on my project to do this because I know she's good at what you're good at. How do we do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so basically using everyday opportunities to share what you're working on, and please only talk about those things that you're working on that you like doing. Because let's say if you have to, because it's what the project demands, you have to spend a whole week of creating or writing new macros for spreadsheets, then this is what you have to do on, right in this moment, but it's not particularly what lights you up. So please don't talk all about that all of the time, because then people, then they clock you for, that's Nicole and she's really good with writing macros. And all of a sudden you keep getting requests for that exact same thing. And it's like, man, I really don't want to be doing this. Yeah. So that is, sometimes we think we need to tell someone about what we're doing, what we're good at, and what we like doing. And then we sit there eagerly waiting. Okay, and now where's my next job offer? That's not quite how it works. But internally, this is a bit of slow burn, so to speak. So you have to consistently and in small doses tell everyone what you're working on, and what you enjoy doing, what you're good at, all of these kind of things. And it doesn't always have to be this big speech that you're giving. You don't have to take over the whole lunch conversation with those kind of statements, not at all. But it's just, dropping a few things here and there. So I don't know, for example, many of the virtual meetings that we have, then there are some people who are right on time, and for other people we still have to wait for them to show up. So you can always use these 2-3 minutes that you have at the beginning and just say, hey, what are you all working on today? Or for me, this week was really busy doing X, but it was really fun to do because we achieved Y. And I particularly enjoyed it because I really revel in using my strength set. So, it's just like a super short sentence, but then everybody has heard it. Everybody gets in sharing for themselves. And this is just, it's just one small way, but you can really get creative about this. And so really talking about your strengths and your successes and what you enjoy doing. And then regularly also sharing your aspirations. So if yet again you feel you should have been picked to be part of a certain project, but weren't, then you should just go to that, whoever made that decision and say, hey, I saw you put together the project team and person XYZ is on there. And, I really love doing this type of work. I would like to learn more about how to do that and so on. And the next time you staff a project of yours, I would love to be considered. Or do you have any advice for me how I could, be part of the next project and so on? So yeah, you have to say what you want. It's like in a restaurant. If you don't order what you want to eat, then nobody will bring it for you.
That's very true. That's very true. I love that. You've given two really practical examples there of how we can just slip in gently into the normal day, how we want to, what type of work we want to do, what type of passions we have, what we're interested in. And then, and when we don't get on that project, or at least before that, ask, keep your ear to the ground. I always say, listen out for when there's new big projects are coming and get your name forward. Get there early, get in the seat. And if you don't, then definitely ask, how can I get on there next time? I'm really interested in this. How do I get involved in more of that sort of work? That's brilliant. That's that vision of yours about creating the job you want, isn't it? Yeah, brilliant. When you talked about talking about the things that you don't want to do and avoiding that, I was absolutely there. That's exactly what I did. I did one of these ERP implementations. It was a data migration and integration. And for about 2 years afterwards, whenever anybody asked me about big projects, I would always just talk about that one, even though I never, ever, ever wanted to do another one. It just felt like the biggest accomplishment. Therefore, I needed to. And what I notice is, whenever somebody comes to you on LinkedIn, they're looking at what you're saying your big accomplishment is. And therefore, if that's on there, that's the type of job offers and contacts you're going to get. So I guess that's the whole personal brand thing, isn't it? Put out there what you want to do more of, what you enjoy, what your zone of genius is, all that kind of stuff, and not necessarily just what you happen to have been given so far.
Yeah. And even if you have, let's say, for 3 years, you work on this big, massive project and there wasn't time to do anything else, then you can still talk about being on that project, but really highlight and call out those elements that you enjoyed working most. So let's say, okay, if the data migration part wasn't your favorite thing to do, then maybe it was more the project management aspect of it, or it was collaborating with an international team, or it was I don't know, it's like brainstorming, risk mitigation, and solving problems. So then, it's still that same project, but what you highlight and how you talk about it, you can always not spin it, but just emphasize really the parts that you want to have more of, maybe with a completely different project.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, that's a really, really valuable piece of advice. And so we can obviously talk about it, but what about when there are situations that when we're not really getting the exposure to the people we want to talk to about it? We're, especially at the moment, many of us are working on Teams. We're not getting invited to as many meetings the same, or seeing people about. Are there other ways of building your credibility that people sort of inadvertently hear about you or the things you do or see some of your work and your expertise?
Mm-hmm. Don't underestimate how much word words travel through the organization, and your reputation builds and exceeds you basically before you even speak to some people. So first of all, you would be surprised how much and how often senior managers exchange about the people on their teams. So even if, let's say, you are in department A and you really want to get exposure to a senior manager for department B, then at some point it would be good if you can have a chance to say hello or like make an appearance in front of that person. But if they belong to the same function, they will regularly review their talent lists. They will regularly talk about succession planning. They will regularly talk about, there will be monthly reports, all of that sort of stuff that is going on. And if you do a really good job, and if you're of good help and value to your boss or even other, more mid-level managers in those functions, then they will talk about you. Your name will just come up naturally. Same for your direct peers, the ones on your level. You might think sometimes that it's like they don't have any decision-making power. It's like, okay, yes, maybe not right now, but for one thing, what I have seen is that, let's say you start at the same time in the company and you start on the same level, or maybe somebody joins the company later and the level below you, but then they take a totally different career path, and 5-7 years later, they're all of a sudden your boss. So there you go. So that is, when you can reap the benefits or the results really from those early investments into that relationship. Second of all, I once had the situation that, okay, I'm with a peer from another department, but we're running a project together. Anyways, I brought new ideas or a new way of going about things to this project that he learned from me, and he then went on to share that in his team meeting, and that, that way your name travels again with a really good reputation. And it can even, maybe just to illustrate yet another example of why I think it's so important to not be so focused on just the senior managers, but really think about everybody that you work with. I once had the situation that we were looking for to put together a team for a part of a project, and someone's line manager said, okay, do you want her on the team? Because I know senior manager X isn't really a fan of her. She didn't really deliver on that other project. And all of us, so if it were only for that senior manager, it's like, okay, it's like, open a box, put her in, doesn't deliver, close the box. Instead of knowing that people have to learn and grow, and we learn through mistakes. And so, but all of us, we knew that she is very willing to learn and to contribute, and a good person to work with. And so we said, like, okay, we don't care what that senior manager says, please, give her as a resource to this project. And I hope this just illustrates for everyone that it's not just the higher ups, but really there are so many opportunities to build good working relationships with just anyone, and that builds your reputation on autopilot, basically.
That's a really good example. And I wonder if that person would ever realize that conversation was happening and that you were advocating for it, even though, or him, even though, this other person had decided she'd not performed very well on that project. That's really good. That's very good. Excellent. And in terms of key takeaways that you would like to give our listeners on credibility and building their credibility, what would be your big takeaway?
Basically, do it in tandem. So every week, do one small thing that builds your credibility with yourself, and one small thing that is, outward focused. And then it's really not about having like one big blast or marketing campaign about yourself, where you draw all the attention to you, but just try and make it a habit and consistently work on those two elements. And I think we touched on a lot of strategies and examples on how we would go about this.
Absolutely. This is definitely one for the notebook and pen. I should have given that warning at the start of this episode. You can always listen again, grab your notebook and pen. There's loads of actionable tips here from Nicole. Brilliant. And obviously you're running the STEM Reimagined masterclass series, which I'm honored to be a part of delivering that. So I would definitely urge people to sign up for that. So how can people find out more about you, Nicole, and also sign up for the STEM Reimagined Mastermind?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect there. You can also, and my website you'll probably put in the show notes, is intoactioncoaching.de. And then for the masterclass series, like you said, it's running twice a year in March and September. It's a week-long free professional development opportunity, and you can sign up. So the waiting list is always open to sign up, so you'll be notified as soon as we start. Going to womeninstem-reimagined.com, and yeah, it's going to be fabulous and awesome, and I just hope we get as many people in learning from us and with us.
Absolutely. And just to give our listeners a little flavor of what you've had in the series in the past and what's to come for the STEM Reimagined, what kind of talks should we expect, and training and personal development and professional development can the listeners expect?
Yeah. Okay. So it's always a really good mix. So I have around 10 speakers with pre-recorded interviews that you can just, for your own convenience, listen at your own time during the whole week. And we've had, and we're going to have in the same way, some people talking about resumes, how to write your resumes, how to use LinkedIn for job search. We're talking about mindset and confidence building. We're actually, for the next one for September 21, we're also going to have someone speaking on negotiation. We have someone speaking on executive presence, and this gonna, so just the interviews, they're always half an hour long, and they focus on one specific narrow topic, and we dive really deep and make it super actionable for you. So again, pen and paper at the ready. Plus, then what we also start offering are live calls and workshops. So whoever is signed up can just join. And I know, Sue, you will be delivering one of those workshops. So yeah, it's just, there's going to be a lot to explore, and it's free for everyone who wants to learn and grow.
Brilliant. That's a must-have, I think, for anybody who's looking for career progression. They sound like some fantastic topics. I'm thinking negotiation comes up a lot. Negotiating your pay, your package, your role, everything like that. That comes up so frequently. And executive presence. That sounds incredibly intimidating, but at the same time necessary if you want to get on that board. So yes, probably a fantastic session. I'm looking forward to that one as well. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Nicole. I can't wait to be involved with the STEM Reimagined and to work more closely with you. So, folks, if you need any of those links, they'll be underneath in the show notes. And thank you once again to Nicole.
Thank you for having me.
Take care. Thank you. Bye.